Good day. Previously, we discussed the topic about the top most committed cybercrime of 21st century. And I've noticed that most of the crime presented was occurred online or through web. And because of it, this inspired me to discuss web security. My name is Masasi Aray and welcome to Foundations of Programming Web Security. Now, let's begin with the general definitions of security. According to Wikipedia, it is the degree of resistance or protections from harm. It applies to any vulnerable and valuable asset, such as a person, dwelling, community, nation, or organization. One section of security is web security, and it is defined as a set of procedures, practices, and technologies for protecting web servers, web users, and their surrounding organizations. Security protects you against unexpected behavior. Now let's talk about general security principle. And one of the general security principle is least privilege. According to Jerome Saltzer, every program and every privileged user of the system should operate using the least amount of privilege necessary to complete their job. Just provide only the user with a limited privilege to complete their job. For example, the HR user should not see any information about accounting module, and accounting user should not have access to HR module. But this definition is not only limited to user. Code has access privilege too. Let me give you an example with some PHP code. Let's say we have a class user and have some variable on it, valid user and password, and has some function authenticate and password matches. This code is used for authentication process, and notice that all of the items were marked as public. That means that they are publicly accessible or callable. Three of them, however, don't need to be. They only be used internally by the class itself. The only item that should be public is authenticate. That's the only method that we need to call outside the class. What we need to do is change to private, and that will conform to the least privilege principle. Now, we will move to our second general security principle. Simple is more secure. First, let me ask you a question. Which would be more easier to secure? A house that only one door, or the house with 5 doors and 5 windows? Obviously, the answer would be the house with one door. The larger the system becomes, the harder it becomes to secure. Larger system has more area to consider. Simpler is always more secure. In programming, there are several techniques that you can use to reduce complexity and therefore increase security. First, you can use clearly named functions and variables. You can write code comments why you choose to do a different approach or make note security concerns that future developer should be care of. You should also break up long sections of code into smaller functions. And most importantly, don't repeat yourself. Object-oriented programming is one good way that encourages this practice. If we duplicate ourselves and then later found a bug, there is a chance that the bug will get fixed to one version, but not on the other one. You should watch out also a legacy code. You should schedule legacy code cleanup. and should be considered as a security concern. Don't let all code of lines around in your program because it might be providing a backdoor. When you call function using built-in function in a language or framework are often better than writing your own version. There might security concerns that considered in the built-in functions and not in your own version. The last is disable or remove unused features when possible. So for example, you don't be PHP enabled if you're not using PHP. You could be open to a variety of PHP vulnerability. You should consider this principle in mind. Simple is more secure. Now we are moving to our third and final general security principle: blacklisting and whitelisting. Blacklisting is a reference list for what is forbidden. If we list a user ban to our website or list the action that user can do or data that they can't access, and that will be a blacklisting or no access list. Whitelisting is the opposite of blacklisting. Reference list for what is permitted. We list the users that can access our site. We list the actions that user can do or data that they can access. Although blacklisting and whitelisting are opposite, they are not equal. Whitelisting is more secure than blacklisting. To show what I mean, let's say we have item A, B, and C, and B is only accessible. So we will write it as A and Z are blacklisting, or B is whitelisting. Both of them have same effect. A and Z will not be accessible, and B is the only accessible. What if we add D on the item list, and D should not be accessible? In blacklisting, I should add the item in our blacklisting list. But in whitelisting, it is already inaccessible by default. I don't have to do anything extra because I only whitelisted B. Strictly by default is more secure, and whitelisting is strictly by default. That's why it is more secure than blacklisting. Now, we will discuss the top 2 most common attacks in web server and web application. Remember, awareness of what possible attack that you can get makes half of work to secure your web applications. Now let's begin with cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting is a type of computer security vulnerability typically found in web applications. XSS enables attackers to inject client-side script into web page viewed by other users. A cross-site scripting vulnerability may be used by attackers to bypass access control, such as the same origin policy. SQL injection is our second most common attack. It is a code injection technique and used to attack data-driven applications in which malicious SQL statements are inserted into an entry field for execution. Through SQL injection, the attackers may input specifically drafted SQL command with intent of bypassing the login form barrier and seeing what lies behind it. This is only possible if the inputs are not properly sanitized and sent directly with the SQL query to the database. SQL injection vulnerabilities provide the means for a hacker to communicate directly to the database. There are so many web security concerns that we should consider, and I hope that this presentation will serve as your initial step in securing your web application. Thank you and have a blessed day.